people are having a hard time. And one of the messages I have is like, it's not immigrants that are making it so that people are having a hard time. It's the fact that we're making it so that human labor is less and less central to the economy, where now it's more normal to have 2, 3 jobs. 94% of the new jobs created since 2005 in the US have been gig, temporary, or contractor jobs. And so when I was digging into the numbers, I said, okay, it turns out that Donald Trump's election directly linked to the fact that we're decimating manufacturing jobs and we're just going to keep cycling through these other occupations. And then when I started doing research for my book, now out on paperback, more now people. But when I started doing research for my book, the data just got bleaker and bleaker around human beings, where how many of you knew that America's life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years? And why is that? Opioids and suicides. Both of those have now overtaken vehicle deaths as causes of death in the US. You all want to know the last time America's life expectancy declined 3 years in a row? The Spanish flu, 1918. It's an anomaly in a developed country. It is not actually normal for your life expectancies to go down in a developed country. It's almost unheard of. And so it's not just that. Our labor force participation rate right now is at 63.2%, close to a multi-decade low and the same levels as Ecuador and Costa Rica. No knock in those countries, but still not like where you want to be if you're an industrialized nation. Almost 1 in 5 prime working age American men hasn't worked in a year, and this is year 10 of an expansion. These are supposed to be like the best times you get, more or less. And so the data, to me, was shockingly consistent with the narrative of an automation wave that we're in the 3rd inning of. And the 4th and 5th and 6th innings are going to be devastating. How many of you all have friends who are working on artificial intelligence or AI-related companies, like most all of you? So there are some themes here. Polly's worried about people, and a lot of you work in tech and know people who are working in tech. And again, the more you know, the more concerned you get. The more you're like, wow, do I think that AI can outperform a call center worker who makes $14 an hour? Yeah, I do. You know, most of you are like, yeah, sure. What's the time frame on that? Now, 2 years from now, there are 2.5 million call center workers still in the United States making $14 an hour. What percentage of Americans graduate from college today? It's 32. So if you include 2 years and associate's degrees, 2-year programs, it's 42. So if you think about the workforce, 58% are high school graduates, making typically between $14 and $15 an hour. So when you think about American jobs, you should think about lots and lots of high school grads. The most common jobs in the US economy are administrative and clerical work, including call center workers, retail, food service and food prep, truck driving and transportation. Being a trucker is the most common job in 29 states. There are 3.5 million truck drivers in this country. 94% male, average age 49, average education high school or 1 year of college, a lot of them ex-military. This is going to sound very politician-y, but I was just with a trucker in Iowa last month. I was. Yeah, why Iowa indeed? Mystery. I'm actually going there again on Monday for the 9th time. And so you look at it and say, okay, there are 3.5 million truck drivers. Are we pretty confident that we're going to have robot trucks on the highways in 5 to 10 years? Sure, they'll be on the road. I mean, they're on the road now. Like, they're actually testing robot trucks now. Are you going to have a robot truck maybe with a human there, like, twiddling their thumbs as like a quote-unquote fail-safe? Like, maybe. But eventually, are you going to start thinking, maybe I can convoy some trucks together. I get a human in the first one and then a couple of robot trucks following right behind. Like, that's pretty reasonable. You know, and so you can start seeing where this is going to go. Dozens of truckers recently protested in Indianapolis. They did something called a slow roll, which is they had a bunch of trucks, and then they just started driving their trucks slowly on the highway, gums up traffic. What were they protesting? They were protesting the electronic monitoring of their driving time and work shifts. How do you think they're going to react when it's a robot truck that's actually taking their job away? I'm going to suggest they're not going to take that well. Right now, the average trucker makes a little less than $50,000 a year. It's one of the higher paying jobs for a high school grad in this country. What's their next economic alternative going to be when the robot trucks come? It's a rhetorical question. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Now, I studied economics in college, and what my textbook said would happen if you were to lose, let's say, 4 million manufacturing jobs. Who here studied economics? Someone did. So what did your textbook say would happen? Retrain, reskill, higher productivity work, economy grows, all is well, right? You remember that from macroeconomics, that you got to be in, and then forgot? That's fine. I got an A. So that is what the macroeconomics textbook says. And then it turns out in real life, when you go look at the numbers of what happened to manufacturing workers in Michigan or Indiana, 40 to 44% of them left the workforce and were never heard from again. Now, how did they survive? About half of that group filed for disability. There are now more Americans on disability than work in construction. 20% of working age adults in some parts of the country. And if you go to these communities, you can see it. There are just a lot of people on disability. Now, are they genuinely disabled? Yeah, a lot of them had genuine injuries, because if you're working in a manufacturing plant for 12 years, like, you probably have something messed up. But would they prefer to be working? Like, in most cases, yeah. And so what happened to the manufacturing workers is almost certain to happen to the truckers. It's like there is going to be no magical realignment. You're not going to take 500,000 middle-aged men and turn them into coders or whatever ridiculous fantasy someone is peddling. And the other aspect of it too is that it's like, why on earth do you think you're supposed to try and turn a truck driver into a software engineer? Like, reflect on that for a moment. And the reason is that we define ourselves by economic value at this point. It's like, if you don't have any economic value, then we have to turn you into something that does, even if it makes no sense in the world to think that we can do it. And when I went to Washington, D.C. with a set of issues, so I'm a pretty cool guy. So I went to D.C. and was meeting with various legislators and policymakers, because I was an Obama appointee. I was an honorary ambassador of entrepreneurship. I have some stories to tell, but what can I tell? I'll tell a stupid story just because I found it funny. So I'm in the White House with Daniel Lubetzky, the CEO of Kind bars, little snacks. And someone's like, I'm hungry. And then I kid you not, he opens his jacket like this, like he's Batman. And he has Kind bars all over. Like, he must have had a custom jacket made with 8 extra pockets. So he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And they're flavors you've never seen or heard of and never seen or heard of again. It wasn't here's an almond apricot. No, it was some weird flavors. Anyway, so, and then I was the only person who brought my wife. I was like, how did the rest of you stay married? This was just weird. Everyone's like, here's my comms person. I was like, here's my wife. What are you guys doing? Anyway, so I'm a cool guy. So I'm meeting with various legislators in D.C. being like, guys, what are we going to do? We're in the 3rd inning of the greatest economic and technological transformation in the history of the country. What is the plan? And what do you think they said to me when I said, what is the plan? There's no plan. They looked at me like I was speaking another language. The responses I got were, we can't talk about that. We should study that. And we must educate and retrain Americans for the jobs of the future. And then I said, guys, I looked at the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective government-funded retraining programs are? 15%? Yes, 0 to 15%. We're terrible at it. And so then when I said, we're terrible at that, then the legislator would be like, well, I guess we're going to get better at it then. And then they'd just go back to their lunch. And I'd just be like, holy shit. Is this what passes for thinking, at this point? Are we so far gone as a country that we're not even reckoning with the fundamental changes that are devastating our communities? Yeah, that's where we are. That's totally where we are. So then I go home, I'm steeped in this knowledge, this certainty, this dread. And keep in mind, I'm one of the most celebrated social entrepreneurs of this generation. I get medals, awards, accolades, for being the guy who created thousands of jobs around the country. And I am 100% certain that my work, as proud as I am of it, was pouring water into a bathtub that has this giant hole ripped in the bottom. And no one's going to do a damn thing about the giant hole. So then I went home and was like, okay, what is the plan? What are we going to do? And I have 2 young kids who are 6 and 3. And so literally, I'm looking at them being like, am I really just going to raise them in this country that's going to disintegrate around them and just like start trying to sock money away so that we can like have a bunker like some of my richer friends? Like, is that really the plan? And that struck me as deeply pathetic as a plan. And so I said, okay, what is the actual plan? Like, what am I going to do? And then I thought, well, in order to make it so that the people that Polly is worried about, like that the people will do better, you have to actually redesign our economy. You have to like change the rules so that we don't value ourselves solely as economic inputs, but we value ourselves intrinsically. Like maybe we're worth something even if our truck starts driving itself, or the AI is better than us at reading the radiology film, or you know, my mall closes and like I'm a 39-year-old woman who works in the mall. So we have to start looking at valuing ourselves at some other mechanism than the marketplace, because the marketplace is about to turn on us in epic, catastrophic fashion. And so it's like, okay, how do you make that happen? And so then I looked and said, well, the only way to rewrite the rules of the economy is to get control of the government. And I said, okay, how do you get control of the government? You run for president and win. And then I said, okay, what are the rules for running for president? Only 2 rules, it turns out. 35 or older, and natural born citizen. So I was like, check and check. And then I was like, and then check number 3 is I went to my wife and was like, hey baby, I think I'm gonna run for president. And then she was like, that's nice, like, pass the sauce. So that's how I came to run for president, on a platform of universal basic income, which is that we have to start putting $1,000 a month in the hands of American adults as soon as possible, which would enable tens of millions of people to make effective transitions. And as a parent, what excited me the most about this was that the data very clearly shows it makes children healthier and stronger, it improves nutrition, it improves graduation rates, it improves mental health, it improves relationships, domestic violence goes down, hospital visits go down. It actually just makes life better for people. If you're interested in female empowerment, there are millions of American women who right now are in exploitative or abusive jobs or relationships, or are doing work that is unrecognized by the market. Like my wife. My wife is at home with our 2 boys, one of whom is autistic, and what does the market value her work at? 0, unfortunately. She gets the big goose egg. GDP, the same thing. When I know she's working much harder and doing more important work than certainly like the average hedge fund analyst or whatever it is. And so we have all of these perversions baked into our valuation of ourselves based upon what the market says is important or valuable. And so you create this universal basic income, which is not my idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. He called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King championed it full on the last year of his life in 1967 before he was killed. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists signed a study saying this would be great for the economy, and it passed the House of Representatives twice under Richard Nixon in 1971. Came this close to being law. It's called a Family Assistance Plan. Would have guaranteed everyone a minimum income. And the reason it didn't pass was that Democrats in the Senate wanted a higher income threshold. And then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where everyone in that state now gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year. And what state is that? And how do they fund it? And what is the oil of the 21st century? Technology, that's right. I've heard marijuana, I've heard a lot of things on that one. But it is technology. And now I'm going around the country saying, look, what they're doing in Alaska with oil money, we can do for everyone with technology money. As a matter of fact, we don't have a choice but to start moving this direction, because if we follow GDP and capital efficiency, we're going to follow it off a cliff, which we are doing right now. We're in the middle of it. Donald Trump is not business as usual. Donald Trump is a sign of disintegration, and the disintegration is accelerating. You can see it in any numerical measurement. Life expectancy, mental health, deaths of despair, like any measurement you want, business formation, marriage, child rearing, all of them. Historic lows, multi-decade lows, moving for a new job, multi-decade low. Pretty much any measurement of healthfulness you can find in America is at a multi-decade low or a record low right now. We are falling apart. And so this is this is an overdue move. Like, this should have happened decades ago, but here we are, it's 2019, and we have to make it happen now. So that's universal basic income. Put $1,000 a month in the hands of every American adult. Now, some of you are thinking like, ha ha, that sounds great, but isn't that way too much money for us to afford. Who's thinking that? Raise your hand. Anyone? No one? Wow, that'd be great. At least a few people are like, hey, that's like $3 trillion. Now, what's amazing is that it gets actually very, very affordable very fast. For context, the economy is at $20 trillion, up $5 trillion in the last 12 years. So we're at like massive levels of wealth. And instead of costing $3 trillion a year, it actually costs more like $1.8 trillion because we're already spending $1.5 trillion on income support, 126 welfare programs, Social Security, and other things that end up just bringing the cost down of guaranteeing everyone $1,000 a month. So what I referenced before about this technology money, you all saw the headlines where Amazon paid 0 in taxes last year despite record profits, right? And I'm going to suggest that's not Amazon's fault, that's our fault. Like if you're Amazon's management team, you're like high-fiving, you're like, yes, another year of 0 taxes, well done, give those tax lawyers a bonus. And that's cool, that's what they should do, that's what they're supposed to do. But what we're supposed to do is say, hey, we have to have a system that you can't just freaking game that easily. We need to get the American public a slice of all of that economic innovation that's happening. Because the trap we're in right now, who are going to be the big winners from AI and the rest of it? Who wins? The biggest tech companies, right? You know any promising AI that's going to buy anyway, because they're worth $1 trillion. You come up with a promising AI company, they're going to buy you for $2 billion, and then just going to tack you on. So the big winners are the Amazons and Googles and Facebooks and Ubers of the world, and they're great at not paying a whole lot of tax. And so what we have to do is we have to have a tax that they can't game their way out of. And so if you look around the world, every other advanced economy already has a value-added tax, which is very hard to game. And so if we adopted a value-added tax at even half the European level, it generates $800 billion in new revenue, which combined with current spending, all the economic growth that would happen. Imagine if you all walked out of here with an extra $1,000 a month. You know, I dare say your local economies would be a little bigger. You'd be like, excellent. Pizza on me, or you know, whatever it is you do later tonight. But multiply that times everyone in the economy, you get hundreds of billions in new tax revenue. You save hundreds of billions on things like incarceration, homelessness services, emergency room health care. And then you also generate hundreds of billions of dollars by having a healthier, stronger, mentally healthier, more productive, more entrepreneurial, more creative population. This thing will pay for itself. This is called the trickle-up economy, from human beings, families, and communities up. What do you think? The trickle-up economy, the human-centered economy. So that is the game plan. That is my plan to save humanity. And ordinarily I have a slide, I don't always have it, but I have like pictures of my family up. And if you look at my little boys' faces, you will see they are not very tough little boys. They're very, very not tough. And so I'm doing this to keep the country strong and whole so that they can grow up not tough, if you know what I mean. And so that is the plan. So hopefully I've answered some of the questions you might have had about universal basic income and the main idea. Big gist, if someone asks you what's universal basic income, you just say it's a policy where everyone in a society gets a certain amount of money, no questions asked. And most of the policies are around the same level I'm proposing, which is $1,000 per month per adult. So that's what it is. Why to do it? Because our economy is being transformed in ways that are going to displace millions of American workers, and it's already happening. Can we afford it? Yes. Will it cause inflation? No. Is it awesome? Yes. Is anyone trying to make it happen? Yeah, that guy. And then now, hopefully, all of you too. So would love to take some questions from you all, but I'm going to suggest too, the reason, if you came here because you're worried about people, you are right to be worried, because this economy is going to go from punitive to savage pretty quickly. The next downturn, the knives are going to come out. Like, I've been a CEO, you don't fire people when times are normal, but when times get tough, you like just look around and see who's not nailed down. And even if they're nailed down, you start looking for a nail remover. So in the next downturn, it is going to be savage, and we have to get our shit together between now and then. So if we don't fight for it, none of this will happen on its own. I've been to DC, I've seen the machinery. You know what I'm talking about too. Like, no one's going to do a damn thing. So we are going to have to do it for ourselves. In entrepreneurial circles, there are two mindsets. One is someone else will take care of this, and the other is I'm going to take care of it. And we all know that this is something that no one else is going to take care of. So thank you all very, very much. We'd love to take questions. I think there's a mic for you. Thank you all.